Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I am here today at the James Julia Auction House taking a look at some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their spring of 2017 auction. Today, we're going back to the 1980s, well, the 1970s and 80s, to take a look at this Devel Smith Wesson Model 59 conversion. So, this story really begins in 1955, when Smith & Wesson introduces their Model 39 pistol, which was basically the first 9mm service pistol manufactured and sold in America. There had certainly been others, the high power, of course, being a main one, the P38, the French 1950. There were a bunch of 9mm pistols out there, but they weren't American-made pistols. It took a while before the cartridge really caught on in the United States. And Smith & Wesson was really the first with their Model 39. It was a single-stack, double-action gun. It had a slide-mounted decocker. And for the 1950s, it was actually a pretty advanced, pretty good gun. Never quite perfectly reliable. Smith & Wesson did a lot of upgrades and updates and improvements to it over several decades. But by the 1970s, this was starting to get popular. Smith & Wesson had also released the Model 59, which was a double-stack version of the same gun. The 59 was actually developed in an effort to get contracts with Navy SEALs. They initially developed a model of the 39 that used Browning high-power magazines, and then continued to develop the idea and ended up with the Model 59, which used their own proprietary double-stack magazine. 59 had a 14-round capacity. Not a bad gun. However, at this point, at this period, while there are 9mm service pistols, there aren't really any options for a compact, concealable 9mm carry pistol. Everything out there was kind of oriented towards police and military open carry, really. And there were people out there who wanted a concealable pistol. Now, at this point, revolvers were really the go-to solution. Do you want a compact gun? Well, snub-nosed revolver works perfectly. But not everybody liked that idea. There were people who wanted the higher capacity of a 9mm, especially a double-stack 9mm. So this became the realm of a number of custom gunsmiths who became kind of famous and notable. And one of them is a guy named Charles Kelsey. Another was Paris Theodore, who developed the ASP pistol. We took a look at one of those in a previous video. That's worth checking out again, because that's a very similar conceptual gun to the Devel here. Reportedly, Kelsey actually ordered an ASP and never got it, and so decided, screw it, I'll just do it myself. And what these both are conversions of existing Smith & Wesson automatics into compact carry guns. Now, Devel, or Kelsey, running the company Devel, would offer a number of different improvement packages for the Smith & Wesson 39 and 59. You know, he had a basic finish or fit and reliability package where and this is the same sort of thing people do to, gunsmiths do to guns today, improve the reliability, improve the feeding, maybe cut some of the sharp corners off the gun. That was a basic package. And then his services ran all the way up to what he called a full house. And in total, he only did 234 full house Smith & Wesson 59s. And this conversion involved all sorts of stuff. The gun was made shorter, thinner, narrower, lighter, smoother, more reliable, better functioning, the works. And we'll take a look at the details. In fact, let's take a look at the details of that right now. So this gun comes in at about 25.5 ounces, which is a couple ounces lighter than the standard Smith 59. This is a Model 59 Devel, and one way you can tell that is actually by the 3 grip screws on each panel. The Model 39 guns, while they look similar from the side, will have only a single grip screw in them. Now, actually, let's just start right at the grips. These are a pair of replacement micarta grips, very thin, and they have this plastic transparent window in the middle, so you can actually look through and see how many rounds are remaining in the magazine. And then, of course, they do have these little Devel logos on those windows, a little trademark by Kelsey. Some of the other distinctive items on the gun include the fluting in the slide. That was simply done to reduce the weight. The trigger guard has been narrowed as well. This hook has been added to the trigger guard, and the workmanship here is really good. You really can't tell that that wasn't on there in the first place. This was added because this was the hot tactical doctrine at the time, that you would actually use a hook like this with the index finger of your weak hand to help control recoil. Today, we'll see people recommending, technique like this with, as you'd call it, thumbs forward as a way to help control recoil on the gun and control muzzle climb. In the 70s and 80s, when these were being manufactured, the equivalent to that was you'd have finger on the trigger here, and you'd have your other finger on this hook and use that to hold the gun down against recoil. It looks goofy to us today, but that was one of the predominant doctrines, and people worked with it. Of course, I've kind of skipped past one of the most obvious changes, which is that the gun has been shortened. Both the grip and the slide are shorter. The magazine capacity is reduced. The original 59s had 14-round magazines. The Devel conversion has a 10-round magazine, simply because it is shorter. Interestingly, you'll see there are 4 little tiny hex head screws that hold the base plates on. These are recognizable magazines specifically made for the Devel pistols. So the original Smith 59 had a spur hammer. On the Devel guns, Kelsey bobbed that off so that it wouldn't snag on clothing as the gun was being drawn. This is a single action, double action gun, so when the gun cycles, the hammer does stay cocked. The top of the hammer here is pretty deeply serrated. In theory, you could use that to slowly drop the hammer, but it doesn't actually work well. It kind of tends to pinch your thumb when the hammer gets all the way down, or you don't hold on to it tight enough and it just drops like that. At any rate, this is double action for your first shot, and then single action for every subsequent round. The trigger itself has been smoothed up. It's not a whole lot lighter than the stock triggers for the Smiths. It is a little bit lighter, but primarily it is a smoother and more consistent trigger pull. That goes hand in hand with the internals being tuned, springs replaced, feed ramp polished, modifications to make this a more reliable pistol. That was one of the shortcomings of the Smith 39 and the Smith 59, is they weren't quite totally reliable. And so with the attention of a gunsmith like Kelsey, they could become reliable, but it took some work. As part of the shortening process, he did also replace the barrel bushing with a fixed barrel bushing, probably also something that would help accuracy and reliability. And speaking of accuracy, the sights have been replaced. So this has a very wide rear sight, like so. And it is also a windage adjustable rear sight. This is kind of along the lines of revolver target sights being added to 1911s, which was kind of around this same period, a popular trend. And lastly, of course, the entire gun has been nickel plated, and that's done to prevent corrosion damage. So really, almost everything about this gun has been modified or updated in some way, modified or improved. When you originally bought one of these, the complete package did include a belt, a holster, 3 magazines, and a double mag pouch. So one of the mags, of course, is in the gun. The other 2 are on the belt. You did get everything you needed. Just strap the thing on and walk out the door and have a really top-of-the-line carry pistol. So Smith & Wesson was not oblivious to these changes going on, to people making these modifications to their guns, and to the market demand for this type of work. And in what some people see as a bit of a betrayal, they never actually worked directly with gunsmiths like Kelsey, but they did adopt a lot of these alterations, a lot of these adaptations into their product lineup. And you would see Smith & Wesson in the 1980s start releasing compact versions of the guns like this, like the 459, like the 3913. And they took a lot of the wind out of these custom guns by taking it over and doing it themselves. That may not have been the best possible thing for the gunsmiths, but I think it's a little hard to argue that it's not a good thing for the gun buying community in general to have these obvious improvements adapted and offered right from the factory. One of the elements that led to some of the unreliability or less than perfect reliability of 9mm pistols in the US at this time in the 70s and 80s was inconsistency in ammunition manufacture. Just wasn't quite up to the standards that we're used to today. And nothing points that out quite so well as the fact that Devel would ship you, or ship with the gun, a case length gauge. It's just a little gauge that goes on your keychain that allows you to confirm that your ammunition actually is made to proper spec to run the gun properly. So we can measure the case length right there. This dummy cartridge is perfect in that regard. And then this cutout is for the extractor rim to make sure that that is also the right diameter. That's a really cool little accessory to have, and one that is very unusual to find. Obviously this thing is small and fragile and easily lost, and very, very rare to see today. The workmanship that went into this pistol is pretty impressive and is pretty intense. And this was an expensive, this has always been an expensive gun. Back in 1980, the list price for one of these full house conversions was $495. That's a lot of money, and that was on top of you supplying the pistol in the first place. So there's a good reason that there were never a whole lot of these done. They really were guns for people who were very serious about having the best possible concealed carry pistol. People who had this idea of exactly what they wanted, and they were willing to pay good money to get it. So as a result, these along with several other guns, like some of the early Detonix 45s and the Asp 9mm, really developed this cult following and appreciation amongst people who really knew practical concealed carry pistols. It's kind of funny that by today's standards, this is kind of too big, too heavy, and looking at this without understanding its history, you'd kind of have to wonder, what's the big deal? Someone put a lot of work into this when they could have just gone out and bought any number of brand new pistols right off the shelf for a lot less money and a lot less work and had better results. Well, the reason for that is we have the compact pistols that we have today in large part because of the work of guys like Paris Theodore and Charles Kelsey, who developed a lot of these concepts back in the 70s and 80s. So that makes this not just someone's carry pistol, but actually a really cool piece of developmental history. These do come up for sale from time to time, but they're not particularly common. Of course, only being 200 and some made in the first place gives you some comparison. This one, of course, is coming up for sale here at James Julia. If you take a look at the description text below, you'll find a link to the catalog page on it. You can take a look at Julia's pictures, description, the other 3 magazines that it comes with, and if you're interested, place a bid right there through the website. Thanks for watching.